Is Avowed going to be fun? Will I want to play it? That's what I want to answer today. I'm going into this completely blind. I've seen some footage of it, and it looks like the kind of game that I would probably enjoy playing. It takes place in the same universe as Pillars of Eternity, which I did really enjoy. And there's like a fear of like Outer Wilds was just okay for me, so I'm 50-50. And at the end of the day, it's all I think it's also coming on Game Pass, so it kind of makes it easy to if I even want to remotely jump in, if it's just okay, if it's just pretty good, like that's an easy sell for me too. Also, before I press record, I found out about 2 hours ago. I think the embargo went off. Game's out 5 days from now. 5 days for an embargo nowadays is like fairly confident. So I guess we'll take a look at all that and see what the heck is going on. Kind of look around at stuff and see if we can make our own judgment here. Let's go. First thing I want to do is probably open critic Avowed. So far, how do I make it show the whole? How do I make it just show the game? So far, we got 84, 82, 84. Am I reading that right? 84. Top critic average versus critics recommend. That's still pretty good. That's a solid 4 out of 5. I still feel like I'm going pretty blind. Do they have a launch trailer, gameplay trailer, story trailer, pre-order trailer? That's the latest trailer, maybe. It looks pretty. Oh, okay. The reviews are out because early access is today. That's not that useful. Avowed gameplay trailer. Whoa, is someone 100% it already? Let's just watch the IGN review for a bit.
On the heels of an insect-filled survival game and a 2D detective story straight out of the 16th century, Avowed is a return to that tradition.
Sorry, I'm hearing there's a TikTok trend going right now of influencer voice. No, 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 and I'm starting to just hear it everywhere, and it's funny to me.
Action RPG comfort food we know and love. Set in the fantasy universe of Pillars of Eternity, this is a game that's filled with all my favorite RPG cliches.
I'm sure you've diffused more.
Everyone's so like soft looking.
Like standing around a campfire with my party members.
It's that like CW look.
Stories and unresolved traumas.
I don't know how much I care about what they have to say here. You know what? Okay, gameplay, no commentary. Is that possible? Is one of the games of all time.
Find anything? I knew you were hiding something.
Chapters, dialogue, critique, role-playing.
For something that's supposed to be a role-playing game, I was also surprised at just how little role-playing there actually is. Walking around the various towns, for instance, they may as well be empty, because outside of the few merchants or NPCs you can interact with, everything else is just window dressing, with people all
That's the worry. That's what Outer Wilds felt like, so it's kind of disappointing to hear that impression.
Standing around idly to give the illusion of the place actually being bustling. You can't even attack the guards or the other NPCs with your weapons having no effect. You can't break into people's homes, you can't pickpocket anyone, and you can outright steal someone's belongings from right under their nose and they're not even gonna react.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I'm not climbing up there. The tower's barely standing.
Even the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout games would let you randomly attack otherwise friendly NPCs if you...
Yeah, that's the thing about a lot of these newer games that try to take notes from these older RPGs that give you a little bit more freedom. It's that the freedom was really janky, but you were able to, it was action and response for way more options of things than what's currently given now. What's currently given now is usually very limited, but it looks prettier and it might play a little bit better because we've gotten better at that. But you lose a lot of the expansive idea, brain, and emergent gameplay that comes with being able to interact with a lot of stuff, which is unfortunate.
Wanted to, forcing you to then pay the toll for your actions. And Morrowind had that infamous message if you locked a playthrough into a so-called doomed world, letting you still play on to experience that reality you created. But yeah, here we are in 2025 with a so-called AAA game that's been in development for half a decade, where things have regressed so much.
And you can argue that this stuff isn't important to most people, right? Which is why they kind of stripped it out. And like, that's just kind of what it is. If the games get more expensive and adding freedom incurs a lot of like testing time, design time, content fill, every interaction needs a response and needs to be polished and tested. And if it's hard to do it in a systemic level, because that accrues a lot of technical debt that you would need to do that, you start getting to a space where it's cheaper just to lock everything down because most people probably wouldn't engage with it that way anyway. But it's kind of weird because if you're a player, knowing that you can break something and knowing that that interaction is there itself even fills up the world, right? I'm playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 right now, and there's a lot of that like sense of you can screw up this world, not in a bad way of like game ending, but you can screw up this world in like a you can accidentally pickpocket someone. And that has a tier of responses that the world gives you. You have a bounty on your head, you need to pay it off. People will chase you for stuff. Items that you steal are tagged as stolen. It's that it makes you think of the world as more of a living, breathing thing. And I think nowadays games are starting to become very like Disney rides. Like you really can't screw up things. There's usually kind of a path that you can see that's walkable, and a lot of other stuff is not interactable and it's more set dressing. So you're stuck in this weird time where, like, a lot of people find that fun still. A lot of people see a lot of the fun and interaction and keeping it very linear and tight. But you're essentially turning the world from a world that's fully has breadth into a world that's kind of like a Disneyland ride, which has its uses and has its appeal, right? But I think there's a need, especially from gamers who've been playing for a while. There's this want of like, if you're telling me you're an RPG, there's an expectation of interaction, especially if games like Baldur's Gate or Kingdom Come 2 are games that do allow that and give that breadth of emerging gameplay that make the world feel more real. So when you take that out, especially if the perception of how much time you spent on it and it's lacking these things compared to other games, that's where the like you're removing something compared to before.
Much that any kind of genuine player freedom's just been completely removed.
This is the exact same thing I felt in Outer Wilds, which is unfortunate. It's this like I want to interact with the world even for funsies. It might be not the focus of the game, which is fine because these games kind of need some focus. But again, like when you're paying all this money for a AAA game and you're paying a higher price now than it was before as a consumer, that's like there's a mix up there between what people expect and what's actually given or possible nowadays, given the like budget constraints, like price of inflation, cost of living, and all that stuff. It's weird because it's not they're separate problems that come in the same circle of the Venn diagram. Something that I'm interested in now is I don't really care
You
about.
even come close to being full, you can instantly move something to your
I could skip
stash
ahead
with
a
the
bit.
press of a button, totally removing the whole encumbrance aspect, which is a huge element to most RPGs. I can't even enjoy any basic puzzles or anything either, because as soon as I find an item I need to use, someone's going to instantly blurt out what I need to do with it.
Bet that key opens the big
Oh,
metal
that
door
is
we saw.
yeah, that's an unfortunate part of a lot of modern games too. I don't actually know where it comes from. The last time we all experienced that as a collective, I think was like too heavily God of War Ragnarok, where they were very quick to tell you the solution to things. So much so that they added a patch in where you could turn that down or turn it off completely. This is the kind of game that when you do that, it feels like the game was focus tested aggressively. And there's, of course, uses for focus testing. And that's the part in the industry that I don't really have a full grasp of because I don't know what happens if you just trust your gut on what a puzzle does, kind of gather some feedback on what that looks like of like solving that puzzle normally. When you get feedback like this, when you pick up an item and it immediately tells you the solution, like something in that screams to me that you tested this with too many people and half maybe like 60% of them didn't solve it right away, so then you made it so that it was easier for them to solve, which took away the thinking that the player needed to do, which some players really like that and some players really don't, which is why nowadays I think you see difficulty scalings of Indiana Jones is the last time I saw it, where you saw basically one mode for more guided experiences and one mode for more exploring higher difficulty kind of puzzles. And it's to appeal to these two groups where one really wants to use their brain to try to solve puzzles, and the other one's just like, you know what? I just want an action adventure. Just tell me what's happening and I'll do it. And when you combine these two into one audience, you lose some people. Okay, yeah, let's check out the combat.
all the combat. And when it comes to that stuff, again, there is at least a fair few options there left up to the player, where what it mainly boils down to is if you're going to use melee weapons like swords or axes, ranged weapons like rifles and bows, or finally just all-out spells. You got three main
looks
skill
silly
trees here
fun.
with the fighter, ranger, and then finally wizard, which is the one I decided to go with, leaning heavily into stats like intellect and perception to really get the most benefit out of that tree.
Like, that seems fun. Being able to throw spells like that with the wand, something clicks in my brain of like, this looks pretty fun.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with melee weapons, but the brief time I spent playing around with it really felt like I was trying to hammer down a tent peg with a Frankfurt sausage. And given the whole fantasy and
Okay,
magic setting and the fact that
I think this is where I would usually stop for this kind of thing. Now I want to see the other half where someone is super positive about it. So who's a high? What's a high review here? Can I sort by highest? 10, 10, top critic. Let's find a publication that's more mainstream or someone that would like, I'm looking for a publication that is like has a lot of traffic basically. I don't know if I will find it very easily. PC Gamer gave it 82. Eurogamer gave it 4. Games Radar gave it 4. There's a lot of 4s from the publications I see as like the usual suspects. IGN Spain and Italy gave it 8. So a lot of 8s. Let's read the PC Gamer review. Humble and old-fashioned. Obsidian's decades of RPG experience still shine through. Just gonna skim over this, looking for any parts that stand out to me. Avowed is undeniably a product studio responsible for Outer World. Did I say Outer Wilds earlier? Son of a son. As the narrative unfolds, Avowed evolves into a fantasy-flavored political pot boiler. I don't know what that means. Into something verging on Dantean. I don't know what that means. What is that? Oh, okay. Reminiscent of the poetry of Dante. What does that mean? I only kind of know what that means. Begin as a messenger, unwieldy as it seems on paper, Avowed maintains an admirable focus on its 50-odd hours. Never lost track of what's happening. Given this is a game with a dynamic glossary, accessible, available mid-conversation. Oh, you can like see what's happening for lore stuff in the middle of conversation, which I kind of like. Because sometimes when you're playing these kind of games, the moment you're lost, right? Like it's really hard to catch up. This is why when I leave a game and come back, I end up usually starting from the beginning. I'm one of those people because I want to experience the whole package together as intended. So if I start in the middle of a save and it's been like a month or two, I actually have a hard time getting back into the mode of what the story was going on, what was happening, or what the stakes were even. So I tend to restart. So if there's a codex that helps you remind things, as like an insight bar in like those streaming services that you're like, here's the actors that are in the scene, here's their names, here's other things that they've been in. Like I do kind of like those kind of features. Some stuff about the story that I kind of don't care about. Kind of most interested in what the core gameplay loop is. Fighting Avowed is surprisingly combat heavy, especially in its second half. Yeah, that usually happens. Possible to play with the usual array of melee weapons, but you'd be missing out a lot if without playing Avowed like a 21st century Hexen, mixing powerful ranged attacks, so you can switch back and forth, which is kind of cool. Possible to muscle about with a mace in one hand and a pistol in the other, for example. Oh, there's guns. Each quest has a difficulty rating. Performance is shaky with a 3060. I have a 3080. I should be fine. Immersive simple isn't just a first-person game, but after a while, the artifice of the RPG system started to show. You can rob people blind without no consequences at all. It kind of means that you can kind of like exploit and min-max robbing people all the time, which, when I'm not in a conversation with someone, that someone forgets that I am there. Okay. So NPCs are very like static and still, and they kind of only are alive when you interact with them. Where agency exists in its conversation trees, and Obsidian makes good in this regard as Pillars of Eternity. Usually my important choices are between two undesirable outcomes or even lesser or greater evils. Yeah, that stuff can be tiring, but it is what it is. I think it's more of a grounded look of the world that you are in. It's the choices that don't matter a lot, but I really enjoyed. Avowed let me wave my snark at high mast. It's possible to be very cheeky during an otherwise very stern occasions, which always made me laugh. Okay, pulling out System Shock. Yeah, it does come at a weird time. This game comes at a weird time with exciting RPGs like Baldur's Gate, Stalker 2, and Deliverance 2. Even Elden Ring. It's better than Dragon Age Veilguard, very direct call out, ranging from meandering depth of its companion conversations to the nuance of its world building and its willingness to get extremely dark at times. Okay, that screams Pillars of Eternity to me. That game had some pretty dark places that it went. And overall 82. This is one of those times where I'm like, I don't like reading text reviews. This is so wordy and like not really helpful. I don't know. That's just me. It's just me when you got YouTube kind of everywhere now to just kind of look at gameplay really quick and kind of make your own mind. What does GameSpot have to
In
say?
a similar way to how Obsidian's The Outer Worlds played very closely to a spacefaring Fallout, Avowed sticks closely to the sensibilities of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Its fantasy world isn't as expansive and seamlessly stitched together, but you'd be forgiven for confusing the two at a glance, especially when you're engaged in its first-person combat. Avowed.
See, that's weighty. I like the swing and the react. That felt nice to my brain.
Lifts some of the best aspects of the seminal RPG and improves them, especially when it comes to its refined combat. These changes extend to a move away from traditional leveling in favor of a gear-focused approach, as well as the option to experiment with wild weapon combinations. But
that seems fun. Gear-focused approach, meaning your character doesn't really level, question mark? So the better gear you find, the better you are, and your person is pretty static throughout that. There's something in there that seems like a good idea. And I guess that's combined with the skills that you get throughout, which would that count as leveling? I
not
don't
all
know.
of Avowed experiments are successes, leading to an uneven role-playing adventure that surprises as much as it frustrates.
Okay, is there anywhere I can skip to here?
Combining your unlockable abilities with the varied ones companions bring to the table gives combat a layer of complexity that is satisfying to engage with. The feedback
I like the pausing to use an ability. I think that's always a good idea.
that combat offers entices you to see how each weapon type works and looks in a skirmish, which makes it surprising that so few are found in chests, offered as quest rewards, or just lay strewn around the map. Merchants offer opportunities to purchase new weapons, but at heavily inflated prices, forcing you to use what you're lucky enough to get your hands on. It's fun to make some combinations work. Using a sword and pistol makes for exciting combat that lets you deal lots of damage, but forces you to evade a lot too. But ability upgrades stifle that, encouraging you instead to prioritize specific weapon types. These upgrades are ones you'd find in a traditional RPG where you're building toward
Can
a
you
specific
respec?
build, rather than ones that encourage you to make weird but interesting combinations work.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen enough. I understand why it's getting so many 4 out of 5s. It seems to have a very solid foundation with a lot of systems that aren't exactly fully balanced together properly. So then what you get is like a good base game that feels pretty good, but all of the ideas are not mixing in a good way. So you have systems that are in place, but the way that the game presents the systems kind of discourage you from exploring and trying stuff, which I think is like a weird problem to have in a modern game. A lot of games seem to get around this by like letting you respec or do whatever you want. I don't know if this game even has that. But it's kind of one of those like it's fun to experiment, it's fun to try, and as much as possible, me as a player, I like to get away with not looking anything up online. Right? I feel like it should be pretty obvious if you engage with the game enough. There should be clues everywhere that help you upgrade gear efficiently, pick the right skills, or try different things, have things scale properly around you, and like it should feel very coherent. And it sounds like the base game is really good, but there's some coherency problems around balancing, which they might be able to shake up over time. We're right at the launch window, right? So this is one of those I can wait for this. I kind of have a queue of other things I want to play right now, especially Deliverance 2 after I finish Deliverance 1. So, which is unfortunate. I was kind of hoping this would be one of the bangers of the year, but you can't win them all. I'm going to leave it at that. This is a maybe down the line when it's on sale kind of game for me. Yeah, that's all I got today. See ya.